You're wearing a sweater that was selected for you by the people in this room from a pile of stuff.
Give me a full ballerina skirt and a hint of saloon, and I'm on board.
I have a hole in my stomach!
I can't go back.
Welcome to the She Became Visible podcast. I'm your host, Rene Steelman. This podcast is my story. It's your story. It's our story. It's all the stories of all the women who one day knew that it was time to remember who they were, who they are, and stand up and be seen. Hello, welcome. Welcome to She Became Visible. This is our second podcast for 2023. My name is Rene Steelman and I am your host, and I am going to be joined by my two gal pals that help me out often with the podcast. We discovered that we all had something in common, and it's one of the glorious things of social media. As much as people badmouth social media, the beauty of it is the friendships and the relationships that we form with people that we would have never in a million years ever had an opportunity to meet up with. And I have Trish that lives in Washington State and Liz that lives in Utah. And I happen to be in Utah right now. Thus the beautiful background. We are staying at a town suite Marriott, and this is the beautiful background that they provide. But today we're going to be talking about our experience with service. And I want to emphasize that one of the beauties that I believe the She Became Visible podcast, one of the things that I believe is beautiful about it is the fact that we are all telling our story. We are sharing with one another. Envision a group sitting in a circle or a semicircle that we've all come to an Al-Anon meeting or some kind of a therapy session where we're each going to share our stories. We're going to learn how to support and be there for each other. And that is what She Became Visible is all about. I am not a historical channel. I am not going to teach you historical facts. I will tell you, if you are not watching Mormonism Live with Bill Reel and RFM, you are missing out on the beautiful, beautiful history and things that they share. There are so many other podcasts out there that will share with you historical, fabulous, fabulous information. That's not what we're about. We're about a sisterhood. And I went out to dinner with three of my friends in Arizona last night, and we laughed. We kidded, we joked around, and it was so healing. It was so healing for me. And that is what She Became Visible is all about. We're healing each other. We are the tribe that we've lost since the idea of a family became so large, and we have now become so isolated because our family and our group has become so large. And we're missing out and we're suffering because of it. So that's what She Became Visible is all about. And that's what you will be hearing today is three women sharing our stories and sharing our experiences. So we're not out here to teach you anything other than what we've experienced. And we hope that we can relate and that somehow we can serve all of you through how we've worked out our different situation. So having said that, we are going to be talking about loss today. And we have all three lost a child. I recently just lost my youngest son in December on Christmas Day. Liz and Trish are going to share their stories of losing their children. And the thing that we all have in common is that we were once members of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, and we have all three resigned. And we're going to be sharing our experience as a member of the church and as an ex-member of the church. And it's very, very interesting. So let's start out by talking about a little bit about, let's see if I can add this. Why and who do we serve? How do we decide who we serve? And what do we think service is? And who do we think we are responsible to serve? That is the question that will start out this conversation. So, do we serve because we have a love of God and we believe that we are all children of God? And that includes everyone who lives on the planet? Or do we serve just our neighbors? Do we serve only the people that we go to work with, only our fellow coworkers? Do we serve only the people that we go to church with? How do we decide who we serve? And do we serve all the creatures that are on the earth, or do we only serve the humans and we don't even think about the lives of the other creatures? So, what is service to you? What do you think of when you think of service? So that's kind of what we're going to be talking about today. So we're going to start out. Let me bring on my cohorts in crime here. Liz and Trish, welcome.
Hello.
Hi.
Hi, ladies. And I have to tell you, so I said we landed in Utah at about 1:30 this afternoon, and it's a little colder than it was last time I was here. I'm not quite sure if I brought the correct clothing, but Trish, you're in Washington State, and it's a little cold there too, isn't it?
Yeah, it's a little chilly. It's not too bad. We've been having ups and downs going on, but there was a tiny little bit of snow on the ground this morning, just a little sprinkling. So,
okay, was it gone by this afternoon?
I don't know. I haven't been outside yet.
Okay, that's right. Trish has been locked in a school. She's not being held hostage. However, she is a teacher, and it might be the same. It feels the same.
Especially this is finals week, so yeah.
Oh gosh, how can it be finals week? It's only January.
Semester.
Okay. Oh my gosh. Okay. Well, I introduced our subject today, which is service. And how do we think of service? Do we think of service as something that we do just for our neighbors? Do we think of service as something that we do just for our congregation or whatever church or group or tribe? Do we only serve our tribe? So that's kind of what we're going to talk about. So just a little bit, many of you, anybody that follows me on Instagram or Facebook, knows that a little bit of my story, but we had, isn't that weird when you start saying we had? My kids and I were talking about that. When people ask you how many children do you have, do you say, well, we used to have? And we've all decided no, we say we have 4 boys and 2 girls, and that unless the conversation goes further than that. But it's very interesting when you start having to put a member of your family in he was.
It's a rough one. And I know, especially when you have little kids, because my daughter passed away pretty young. She was 13 and she was the oldest. So I had little kids. And so, yeah, it was a hard one. But that was really hard because that's the first thing they always ask you is how many kids do you have? And so, you would answer, and I could not claim her. So, I would always say 4. And then the next question always is, and how old are they? And then you're like, so then you're stuck in do you say how old she would be? Do you go into the whole story? Like, it's a hard one. And then usually they feel bad for asking, even though it's a perfectly hard question. And and I still don't have a good answer. I don't.
So what you're saying then is, since I'm new to this, what you're saying is if you think you're going to get away with just saying we have 4 boys and 2 girls, that's not, because then they're going to say, how old are they? Where do they live? Do they live close by? Yeah. Do you have grandchildren? All that. So it is not going to be
No, but you get used to it, and you kind of, honestly, there are times where it depends on the interaction. If this is a quick, like I'm, talking to the checkout person, I will probably just say how old she would be, because they don't really care.
Yeah,
like,
they're just,
but if it's somebody that I will be interacting with, I'll just tell them, and I'll just be like, so FYI.
Yeah.
I still claim her.
Now that brings me up, and as much as I would love to think that this conversation is going to follow a fabulous outline and be very organized, I don't think it is, because again, I think we are 3 gals sitting around talking, and this is going to be a very comfortable and common conversation, just as you would if you were all sitting in this room with me. So that, Liz, that makes me ask you, for your daughter that had a stillborn baby, when people say to her, how many children do you have? What does she say?
She counts Grayson. And she
I almost named TJ Grayson. I love that name.
Yeah, she counts him. I count him when I answer about my grandchildren. And I've had some people go, and I'm like, yeah, Danny had a little boy that didn't survive. And they're like, oh yeah. Like,
yeah. So she's had other children since he was her first.
No, he was sorry, they have a big family.
Oh.
He would have been number 5, and she has since had 2 more.
Okay, so wow. So she's had 5, 6, 7, 8 kids altogether. Yes.
Yeah. She also had miscarried a set of twins that they a few years earlier that they couldn't, the gender wasn't obvious.
Detectable, yeah.
But she's had some really bad endometriosis and stuff like that. So
was he a full-term baby?
No, he was I can't remember. He was really small. It was before, I'm sorry, I can't remember how many weeks. He was super small. He was only about a foot long, and but he was complete.
Okay.
We all held him. He had fingernails. He had hair.
Oh, wow.
He had little eyelashes. He was all there. He just wasn't big enough. And he just looked like he was sleeping.
Oh my gosh. Now that kind of brings me, and this is going to, like I said, this might be a little bit of a mumbo jumbo conversation, but how did people react right after she lost this baby? Did she receive the platitudes that I've heard? Oh, well, at least you have 4 others. Well, at least you're able to have children.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
And did you get that, Trish? Because she was your oldest, but you had other children.
She's my oldest. Yep. Had other children. So I didn't hear any of that, but I did tell you that I had a good story for you. And this kind of goes with that. So when I married my husband, he was not a member of the church. And so we did not go through the temple when we got married. He did join the church later, and we got sealed. And so he and I got sealed together, and our oldest was like 3. So she went with us and was sealed to us. And then when she passed away at 13, I feel like, should I say, she'll never know. My sister-in-law said to me after she passed away, now, aren't you glad that you guys were sealed together? Because now you know that you'll be together. I'm like,
yeah.
Yeah.
I'm not going to punch you in the throat.
And they think they're so nice.
Yes. Yes. And yeah, I'm so glad. I mean, I do have to admit that I do think that having the teachings of the church at the time did help me as we were going through this. Yeah. But no, you don't. No, it's not better. It's not. No.
Oh, sorry, Renee.
No, go ahead, Liz. Go ahead.
I was just, that was my first experience with death, really, other than like people that weren't in my immediate family or elderly. So, and we had all left the church, and I had been I had been a Young Women's president. I had been a Relief Society president. I knew everybody in the ward boundaries, not just the Mormons. I was a stay-at-home mom. I took my baby around and visited with everyone every week. Well, or every other week. But anyways, I thought we were friends. I thought they loved us. And so when my oldest daughter lost her baby, it wasn't that I was expecting something. It just there things were taken away. Right. And I didn't want, I don't know, like the friendship. They weren't really my friends. Right. Like not one, the funeral was awkward.
Oh. They had a funeral. Was it held at the church? Was it held at the church?
People were acting like it was a miscarriage. No, we did a non-denominational. Her husband's Catholic.
Okay.
His parents aren't religious. The father of the baby. There's just we have all different dynamics, and so we kept it non-denominational and just did a graveside, of course.
Okay.
But like hardly no one came, and there was not one soul. Our bishop, who is actually my husband's cousin that lived right across the street from us, no one, and they're good folks. They're good people, but no one reached out. Not one soul, not a card, not a call. And people don't believe me when I say that, but it's true.
Yeah. Yeah. That's the part that I think is interesting. And that made me look up. I actually looked up what the role of the Relief Society was. As members of the church, we all know that the motto is charity never faileth. We've all been on the list of people to bring over a dinner for little Annabeth, who just had a baby. We know, I'm trying to think if anybody ever took dinners in to somebody that didn't have a baby, like if they were just the flu. Or I remember my girlfriend's husband fell and broke his heel, and nobody offered to bring dinners in. She said, I find it odd that he's hurt and our whole family, like I'm having to serve him now like a baby. He can't get up. He can't do anything. I'm helping him do everything. And our, I have 3 kids and nobody's offering to come over and help. But if, I was hurt, they would be like, oh my gosh, let me bring over you. Oh, you poor man, who's fixing you dinner?
And I thought,
true. I never thought about that, but that's true. It's like, oh, if they get hurt, you're like, his wife will take care of it. But if you get hurt, they're like, oh, that poor man. What will he do?
We are worked to death in the church. Women are worked to death inside. And I mean, your family, your house, your yard, your whatever. And and then we have all this stuff at church.
Yeah.
That we have to do.
Well, and I can't find this, but I was looking up. It says, what is the Relief Society's purpose? It said the Relief Society helps prepare women for the blessings of eternal life. I'm like, what about this life? Let's do this life. As they increase faith in Heavenly Father and Jesus Christ and his atonement, strengthen individuals, families, and homes through ordinances and covenants. And I'm like, again, I don't know where the Relief Society is strengthening my ordinances and covenants, and work in unity to help those in need. But if you look a little further on the list of what the Relief Society, it very specifically says that they serve their, let me see if I can find, I'm going to switch to this. If you guys, I'll be back. If I leave, let me see what happens if I do this. Well, there you go. Can you hear me still?
Yeah.
All right, then just listen. Okay, it says let's see, the motto is to help those in need. And then it says the Relief Society is a philanthropic educational women's organization, one of the oldest and largest women's organizations in the world. I hate that because it's just a bunch of hoo-hoo. But under compassionate service, it says the Relief Society presidency is responsible for helping the women of the congregation learn welfare principles such as work, self-reliance, provident living, personal and family preparedness, and compassionate service of others. In many congregations, the Relief Society will ask a woman to serve as the compassionate service leader. And so I felt very strongly that that was saying in the congregation, you will serve the people. And it's funny because when I was, how old are you? 13, 14, I was a My Maid. And I was called in to be the My Maid president of the class. And I remember the bishop saying to me very specifically, you are not, your leadership does not just take the young women, other My Maids that are in this ward. Any young girl that is in our demographic, our ward boundaries, is someone who you are also serving. And I've always taken that. If you're a bishop, whoever falls in your area boundary lines, you are the steward over to serve. And I always thought that. And so when I read that it was that even in the Wikipedia, it was very specific that it was more or less the congregation that they, and look, it's one person. It isn't her full-time job. She, many of these women that are called to be Relief Society presidents or compassionate service leaders have, 50,000 other things going on. So I think there's only so much people can do. But I think in all three of our situations, what we're saying is we still live in the same house we were in before we resigned our membership from the church. And we've served you before. So because
I loved those people. I loved them.
Yeah.
There's still some that I think about and I'm so hurt because I love them. Yeah. They just didn't love me back.
Well, and I think what's fascinating is one of the beauties of the visiting teaching program that was set up, and this ministering stuff is just, somebody stop making Russell Nelson watch television. I don't know where he's getting these ideas, but he comes up with these things and I'm like, what? Stop it. Whatever you're doing, stop it. But the visiting teaching, they would put somebody with me as my companion who I would have never chosen to be a friend with. We had nothing in common. Suddenly, I am learning about this person. I am loving this person. I am loving the people that we've been assigned to serve. I would have never served those people on my own because they're, this lady's, maybe she was 65 at the time and I was 25, it's such a beautiful program. And then to have, like you're saying, Liz, to have those people just go, oh, she's not one of us. We don't serve her anymore.
I mean,
blew my mind.
I was just so crushed. And I said to one of my favorite relatives, we had grown up together. We went all through grade school, high school, even came to St. George to go to what back then was Dixie College together. Mm-hmm. And we were having our children together. We were raising our families as like our kids were brothers and sisters.
Right.
And I'm doing a podcast and sorry.
Family, go away.
I had an interruption.
Yeah.
And I was trying to tell this cousin how no one reached out,
Right.
Like you didn't even come to the services or like, I'm so hurt and I'm blubbering, I'm snotting, I'm heartbroken, I'm still grieving.
Right.
And he said, why would they? And that hurt. Those 3 words still hurt me. Why would they?
Yeah.
And I'm like, and it was like what you said, Rene, because you're a human, because you're someone's neighbor.
I'm a neighbor. Yeah.
I'm your, we were the best of friends, I thought.
Wow.
Like I loved him more than I did my own brothers.
Yeah.
And
well, so just to compare that, or to Trish, tell us the story of your daughter, because I found it absolutely shocking. And I think the most important thing is when my daughter lost her husband, he was killed in a car accident. She was pregnant with her second child. He was 25 years old. And I sat in her apartment up in Seattle, and people would come in with a meal, and then they would share their story of how they knew exactly what she was going through because their mother had died at 85.
That does happen.
Like, yeah. And I'm like, is that the same though? I mean, I think the closer you get in age, or the closer, I mean, to have a young person die is so much different than to have a 94-year-old person die, that you still grieve. I'm not saying that, but I'm just saying, don't tell your story to the person that's grieving. That's not what,
and I do think that this is a kind of a good opportunity for us to kind of share things that we would like to hear or would not like to hear, because people don't know. They don't know. And I do think that that's one of the things that is really difficult. One of the reasons people don't reach out is because they're afraid to. They don't want to make things worse, so they don't do anything. And I think that that's part of it. I also feel like, because we are overworked in the church, that sometimes it's really difficult to reach out to someone who's not in the church, because we're so like
absolutely
bogged down. I have so many organizations that I'm a part of, like, at school and at like my children's sports teams, or like things like that, where people, something happens and people will start the food train, or, like that kind of thing. So it does not have to be church to help each other. And I think sometimes when we are, I'm going to say forced to help each other, because I do feel like that's what happens in the church, is that you then don't have anything left to help people you want to help, because
exactly.
But anyway, so yes, so like I'm saying, I think it would be really good for us to kind of share, if I was to lose someone, what would I like to hear? And Rene, you're definitely right. It's really difficult when you lose someone, for someone to come to you and say, I know exactly how you feel. And I don't think anyone should ever say, I know exactly how you feel, because you don't. It doesn't matter. I don't care if somebody else lost a child at 13 years old for something close to me. You don't. Nobody knows exactly how I feel. But I do think it's okay to say, I also have hurt in my life, and I know it's awful to be hurting, and I'm really sorry that you're hurting. Like that, to me, that's, and here's my suggestion for anyone. All you have to say when somebody loses someone is, I'm so sorry. Like, that's all you need to say is, I'm so sorry. Like, you don't have to try to make it better. You don't have to come up with reasons it's going to be okay. You just say, I'm sorry, So my story, I was still very active in the church. It's a crazy story, so I'm going to try to shorten it. But she was a very healthy kid, got a strange infection, ended up in the hospital for almost a month on ICU, and ended up passing away. The crazy part was that we were literally across the country from where we were living at the time, military. So we had moved. But where we were at the time, we did have, because we'd come back to visit, we did have friends at the church and everything there. And they were so supportive. They were very supportive through the entire month, which was crazy, because they basically took care of our kids for a month. Like, we had friends that would take our kids during the week. They had them at their house, took them to school with their kids, all the things. And then they'd bring them to us on the weekend so that we could see them. But because it was perfect that we would be able to spend that time with our older daughter who was in the hospital. And
and just to clarify, you were living on the East Coast in the military. You were visiting the West Coast, and that's when she got sick. So you were not in your home ward.
We were not in our home ward. Our ward that we knew on the West Coast was actually in Bremerton, Washington, which is across the bay from Seattle. And she was in Seattle Children's Hospital. So it was a good 2-ish hours around to, from our home ward that really wasn't our home ward, our old home ward in Bremerton. And that's where people like kept our kids and would bring them to us. And so they really did serve us. I mean, they really did. It was very sweet. We even got wrong word, not money, but like vouchers, because we didn't have clothes for a month. Like, we packed for a weekend, right?
You're on vacation.
Yeah. And then my husband, so it was just my daughter and I who came to visit. So when my daughter got sick, I had to call my husband, and he had to fly all the way across the country with 3 little kids. And of course, we don't know how they're going to be there. He packed last minute, all the things.
Right.
So the church even gave us vouchers to go to like Goodwill or DI, I don't remember, and get clothes and stuff. So I did feel very supported, and it was fantastic. When she passed away, we had a funeral there in Bremerton because we'd only left there about 6 months before. So we had a lot of friends there. She had a ton of friends there. And that's where she had done competitive gymnastics. So she had a gymnastics team there and like all the things. So it was really kind of neat that we were able to have the funeral there. But I was in no way that I could actually get the funeral, like do all the things. And really the Relief Society president there pretty much did the whole thing. Like I just said, I can't do it. I trust you. You plan it. And I mean, they asked me a few things like what we wanted her dressed in, and somebody made her this beautiful white dress with a pink bow. I mean, just, all the things, like literally all the things. And we basically showed up to the funeral with everything done. It was beautiful. And
that's lovely.
Yeah. And see, that just emphasizes, Liz, what you were saying is that the people are so overworked and stressed that I can see what those people did for you, Trish, was above and beyond everything else that was going on in their life at that time. And then for the Relief Society to plan the funeral and bring the food. I can see where someone would say to you, Liz, well, what did you expect? You left the club.
Yeah.
It's not okay. But
it's like, we're so busy. How do you think we're supposed to serve everybody? How do you think we're supposed to do that? And you chose to leave. What did you expect was going to happen? I mean, you can almost, it's like I was saying, I was not a good servant because I was so overwhelmed taking care of my own son that when other people would say, would you take care of so-and-so's, could you take care of so-and-so? And I'd be like, sure, why not? And I didn't serve happily because I was already exhausted.
Yeah,
so I can see why, but there's also, like you say, but are you my neighbor?
Yeah.
Are you my uncle? Are you my best friend that I spent 25 years with? So that's when you start going, I get it. You're right. I chose to leave the club, but I'm a human and I'm still your neighbor.
Yeah.
But, so that's the part where you start going, let me think about this. And I think what I'm going to do is use this as a learning tool to realize that I was guilty of that myself. I was like, look, I'm already serving in the temple once a week. I have a calling on Sunday. I have 6 little kids. One of them severely disabled. Seriously, and that is what the piling on will do. It takes away. I've heard other people, and I want to make something clear too that I said, because I don't want to hurt. I really don't want to hurt people. I love, Trish, what you said about it's not when people say, oh yeah, I know how you're feeling. My mother died too. It's not that that's not the same experience. It's the fact, what they're trying to say is, I've lost someone important to me in my life. Yeah. That's all they're saying. And I get that. And I appreciated the people that would say that to me, as long as I just keep going back to this lady that stood in my daughter's kitchen and went on and on and on and on and on about this 84-year-old woman. And I'm like, could you just drop off the casserole and go away?
Well, so I do think you have to be careful that you're not making it about yourself.
That's it.
I think that's what it is. I think there's a difference between like, I want you to know that I also hurt, and I'm sorry that you are also hurting, and
yes.
Or, oh, well, let me tell you about my pain.
Yes, that's exactly it. That's exactly it. And it's so funny, you guys. There's been like a weird, because our brains naturally try to make sense out of things that happen. And we do that by telling stories. Yeah. We make up a story that tries to create some kind of order in our brains. So 2 years ago, I spoke at Sunstone for the very first time. And my subject was why I left the church. And I predominantly spoke about how when my youngest son was born, he had a very difficult birth. He was taken up to Oregon Health Science and had immediate surgery. And the entire time my husband was in the stake presidency, was never released. No one from the stake presidency came. No one from our ward came to the hospital. I had 5 little children at home. And in fact, my son, who spoke at the celebration of life, my oldest son, says, I remember when my mom went into labor, I was 9 years old. She woke me up and she said, Grandma and Grandpa are on their way, but you guys just stay in your rooms and don't come out of your rooms until Grandma and Grandpa gets here. So I left 5 kids. The oldest was 9, the youngest was 2. And I left them home. And I was thinking, why didn't I call a relief society? Why didn't I call a visiting teacher or our home teacher? Where were the neighbors that I could call? I called my parents-in-law who lived in, we were in Northeast Portland. They were in Clackamas, Oregon. So that's the only people we could think of to call. That's sad. There was something missing in that ward as far as compassionate service was going on. So that was my first year. My second year, last year, I spoke at Sunstone, and the topic was silly platitudes that people say when people are grieving. Now, we were not grieving at the time.
Funny.
But I was reading all of these books like Everything Doesn't Happen for a Reason, or some of the other things silly people say. I forget what the names of some of these books were, but I had done all this study on silly things people say to people when they've had a loss or something like that. And I, at the time, was relating it to having a severely disabled child and have people say to you, well, God gave him to you. He knew you were strong enough to take him, and things like that. That's how I related it. Suddenly now I'm like, oh, was I being prepared? Because now I'm getting the platitudes. God needed an angel. He's with God now. And I'm like, is he though? Because I don't have to know that to be comforted,
Exactly.
So it's interesting. It's interesting. So Trish, how long after she died were you able to have a funeral?
Oh, it was actually pretty quick because,
wow.
Well, we ended up having what we like to refer to as the traveling funeral, because so we had a funeral there in Washington. We didn't know where to bury her because we moved around all the time, military. She is buried next to my dad in southern Utah. So
cool.
We took her down we went from Washington State down to southern Utah, and we had a graveside service there. And then when we got back to our house in Connecticut, back on the East Coast, we had a memorial service because we also had friends, and she had friends and everybody wanted to do something there. So 3.
And that is stretching that grief out for
clear
what?
Across the United States. But I'm so glad you had people that reached out.
Yeah.
Yes. No, I felt very, very supported the entire time. It was really nice. Yes.
And that helped. That really, I mean, obviously with 3 little kids, it would have been impossible. I can't imagine. And I used to say that. I'd say, hey, we move. You have an instant family. You have instant friends. That's a beauty of the church. Yeah. You have an instant connection. You could, you could go on vacation. Somebody would call a bishop right there, and I love that about the community. What I didn't realize before was how inclusive that community was.
Yeah.
And I think for me, honestly, I think if my husband and I both had left the church, I wouldn't have been surprised at all. I would have been like, yeah, I get it. We left. It's our choice. We left. I get it. It's not your job. But the fact that he's still a member of the ward and people called him, that's what blew my mind. It's like, who are you talking to, honey? Oh, that was the bishop. The bishop called you? Would the bishop like to talk to me?
Yeah.
I mean, that really blew my mind.
I'm the one that carried the child, my body, everything.
I was the one that took him to church, but that surprised me because I knew those people like you, Liz. I knew you 3 years ago before COVID hit.
It's so crushing.
Yeah.
So I just wonder, do you wonder if they think they're doing the right thing because like maybe you don't want to hear from the church? I don't
I
know.
think so. And I think you guys, I'm going to have as a guest in a few weeks, I'm going to have Katie Harmon on, who she was a guest on Mormon Stories. I think it's episode 1720. It was 2 years ago. She had a child that was also born with a diaphragmatic hernia, like my son was. He's like 7 years old now. But she talked about how she thinks, if I'm please, Katie, forgive me if I'm paraphrasing you wrong, but what she said was, because we have the teachings that our bodies are made whole right afterwards, we will be perfect, and that everything is set up in a perfectionist mindset. The only thing that LDS people can think of is, well, what is a perfect scenario for me to console you with? What kind of a perfection story can I tell you? And so that's why people don't, like she said one time she went to church and she said she finally someone said, "How are you doing?" And she said, "I'm not doing well." And the lady said, "I don't know how to respond to that." And Katie just said, and she goes, "How about if you just say I'm doing okay?"
Then
And
why
Katie
did she
said,
ask?
"I know." But she said the lady did not know how to respond to,
Yeah.
"I'm hurting, I'm not doing very well," because that's not what we want to hear. "Oh, I'm so glad we were sealed in the temple. Oh, I'm so glad that we'll be together as a family. Oh, I'm so glad that he's now
They're in a
no
better
longer."
place.
Yes. And that's the consoling that they get. And so they don't know how to respond to, "I don't know where he's at. It doesn't really matter to me. He's not with us anymore." And I grieve that, but I don't have to have a visual of a nursery in a mansion in heaven for me to have some kind of peace.
So that would be my next thing that I would say people for advice is, especially if you know that someone is grieving, if you know someone is going through something rough, do not say, "How are you doing?" unless you want to know.
Yeah, that's exactly right.
How can somebody
Are
be
you
doing
ready
well?
for the response? Yeah. Yeah.
How could anyone be doing well?
No.
Because you have the fullness of the gospel and you know that you'll be together as a family.
Everything's
fine. What are you
fine.
talking about? Everything's fine.
Yeah. I'm gonna, if it's okay, I'm gonna talk about our son-in-law.
Yes, I was just gonna ask you to tell your story, because that's a completely different scenario.
This was okay. So I have we're not in the church, and I already have the fear from what happened when the baby was stillborn. And then death by suicide is so taboo. I still hear stuff from people about the old McConkie teachings that, going to hell. And here we have this. Okay, so my son had a best friend. His parents were going through a terrible divorce. I mean, to the point where like his father had fathered other children in other states and different things that were coming out. It was very bad. And this 14-year-old boy was just thoroughly upset, and I moved him in with us. And anyway, as time went by, he and my younger daughter started crushing on each other. It was so cute. I like puppy love in your home. It's just the best thing. I also had another son that got his girlfriend pregnant, and they moved in. I just loved it. I couldn't even see the sin in it or anything.
Oh,
I was, well, at that time we had a big house and room, and anyway, but these two were just so cute. I mean, I think I was in love. By the time they got married when they were 18, I just felt like he was one of our children. And he was a very cautious, very quiet, very accomplished young man. By the time they were 24, they they had sold their third house, which he remodeled. He worked all day, would come home and remodel. They sold a house in Ivans. Then they went to Vegas, sold one.
Wow.
And then they bought a house with a big shop. He was a welder. He worked for he got transferred down to Las Vegas into working for a big sign company. Had just received his crane operator's license. He had his CDL. He was a certified diesel mechanic before he graduated high school. Just a very, very accomplished young man. He had grown up in LA and was, very cautious about locking doors, things that in Utah we weren't. I'm just learning to do that.
Yeah.
And that irritated him, leaving keys in cars, all this stuff that's not safe. And he taught me some things. He put a flagpole in our yard and had it powder coated, something I had wanted for years. We needed new ceiling fans, and he'd see him sitting in the garage. He was the one, come on, you guys, let's hang up grandma's ceiling fans. And that, just to give you an idea. And then his mother was eventually single, and he was always helping her, giving.
Right.
I didn't see it coming. And then, sorry, I don't even know where to go. It was just like a dream, not a dream, a nightmare.
Yeah,
I remember,
I know what you're saying.
My daughter, anyway, I don't even know what to say, but it was surreal. And then everything just went wrong. And then my sister in Vegas insisted on, my daughter had him cremated, and his family was saying the most horrible things to my little girl. And, she's 24 years old. She has a baby that's a year old. I realized the last few months of his life, he had been a real angry, frustrated, was being mean to her, was, frightening her. And she had lost a ton of weight. She was under 100 pounds.
Wow.
And then his family starts calling her, what did you do? Accusing her of all these things.
Accusing her.
And his body's still in the house. We had trouble getting the coroner, and it was just a real, very tragic thing for me. And then he was my son's best friend, my daughter's husband,
right,
and our son. And because we've raised adopted children, I can only see him as a son.
Right.
And my sister in Vegas got a hold of her bishop, who was actually skiing at Bryan Head. This man was so wonderful. I didn't want to do a funeral or anything, and my daughter didn't. We just wanted to go home. And her ward, we ended up telling the bishop, my oldest son wants to officiate, and he's gay. He plays piano, and this wonderful bishop gave all the permissions. And we said, there'll be people in work boots. He worked construction, and we wanted, anyway, we ended up doing that in Vegas, but it was just a big, crazy tornado, I don't know.
And so I think what I hear you saying is kind of the roulette thing again, where you had a bishop who rallied your family together, and you had a funeral in a steakhouse, in a chapel, LDS chapel.
Yep.
And so in comparison, you have a troubled young man, you have a family that's grieving. It was like you, Trish, it was shocking. It was there was no long history of illness or anything like that, and they rallied together. So you've got both. You've had experience with both where people rallied around you that you didn't, even know
and
that
they
well.
I didn't know not one person that prepared the flowers or
oh my gosh.
There were people from his work that came and did things. And I mean, there were just so many people involved in their lives as a couple that I didn't even know.
Yeah.
And I certainly didn't know anyone from my sister's ward because I had already left the church. But
and I think that goes back, Trish, to what all three of us are saying. So we chose not to have a funeral or anything in Arizona because we've only been there for 4.5 years. And then between COVID, so there was 2 years that we weren't even going to church. And so, people only knew him for maybe a year before COVID hit. And in fact, because when we first moved here, we were renting a house. So we were in a different ward. And then we moved into the house that we built. We were in a different ward. So we'd only been there for a little over a year before COVID hit. And then after COVID hit, there was another year that I didn't attend because I stayed home with him. And so nobody really knew him. They've all seen him and everybody loved him. Of course, he just radiated love. So we decided to have a celebration of life back in Oregon. And the people that came were the people that loved us, and they loved him. They had stories of him. I had one lady, I couldn't believe she showed up because she was a primary president or in the primary presidency. And she would insist, where's TJ? And he was past primary age. He was way over the age of 12. But she said, he loves music. He loves primary. He will be in this primary. And you go, get out of here. We got him. We got him. And he would sit in the back of the room and she would stand there with him and he would sing with all the kids. And she came, and it was those are the people. And I had one guy come up to me, and if you're listening, hi, you know who you are. He came up to me and he said, I listened to your podcast. And I was like, you do? He goes, yeah, we love you, And I mean, those are the people that were there. And then there were the people that weren't there because they're so brokenhearted that I've left the church. It breaks their heart that I've left the church. And it's like, okay, well, you were my friend, like you, Liz, you were my friend for 25 years and your children are not active. Why does it break your heart that I am not active in the church? How about your kids? You love your kids. You love your grandkids that aren't in the church, but I have just broken your heart and you don't know why my husband stays with me. That's the comment, So they don't show up, even though they have memories of him because we were together all the time. And so here's my best friend that was supposed to be my best friend that was with me and him, because if we were going somewhere, half the time we had to take him with us. And we always laughed. We'd always say, good thing you can't talk, TJ, because you tell everybody our stories, And, but she couldn't come because it just, I'm not a member of the church. So she's just brokenhearted over it.
The whole thing is, it wasn't about you. It was about TJ.
It was about him. And it was just about, So the people that loved us and that loved him, they took time out of their Saturday to be there. It was amazing. And then people that my husband worked with called him. And I had people like you guys that reached out to me. And so it really lets you know what true service is and what love is. This is what love is.
And it feels... Oh, I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
It feels so much better. I realized after we came home from Eddie's services and stuff, we did stay at my sister's house a couple more days just because. And we had stayed at Aliante until we didn't have a dime left. Credit, like all of us, our children, we were tapped out.
Yeah.
And I came home and I made a post on Facebook because I brought Carly and her baby home with me, and I got on Facebook and I said, I'm dead broke and I need diapers. And I listed a few things, and there were people that brought truckloads of stuff from Costco that I would never be able to pay for back.
No. And were they just random? Just random people?
No, they weren't church people. They were our friends. And that was the first time I realized there are, the church makes you believe that you need them.
Yeah.
And I just realized I'm going to be okay as a non-member because there are people that still love me.
Yeah. And that's what we found too, Liz. Our neighbors got a basket together. They've all chimed in together and got us some wind chimes that we can, every time we, hear the wind chimes, we can think of him. These are our neighbors. They're all different, they all came from different parts of the United States, and they're not, they all belong to different denominations, or I don't even know, some of them are even religious and whatnot. That was, like I said, I now look at the world completely differently. And I've heard other people say that once they left the church, they realized that when they went and shoveled their friend's driveway, or took the garbage cans in, or offered to babysit, or took over a meal, they did it out of love.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And it feels so much when people jump or just come because they want to.
Yeah, just because they want to and they love you.
And I asked for help. I was one of those people that I wasn't a gracious receiver until then. And then I realized it's important to receive.
Mm-hmm. That's so true. So true. And that is the problem with being an independent, self-reliant person. Sometimes you aren't a very good receiver, for sure. Trish, how old was the other three children? How old were they at the time that you lost your daughter?
8, 6, and 4, somewhere in there.
So the 8-year-old probably has pretty distinct memories.
I think he remembers. The other two, not really, especially the youngest one doesn't remember her at all.
So how do you celebrate her in your family with the kids, like the 4-year-old that really doesn't have any memories? But she probably does now because they've been.
Yeah, we've implanted some memories for her.
Yes.
Lots of pictures. It was actually really sad too, because my oldest was kind of her little second mom. She was always the one carrying her around and making sure she's okay. And so we have actually a lot of pictures with them together because she carry her around and stuff.
Yeah, but, she was her baby. Yeah.
So we would every year. Oh, and actually, I did not realize that your son passed away on Christmas. Yeah. My daughter passed away on Easter.
Oh, these kids. I'm like, come on, dude.
Yeah. So that's always a hard one too. I do have to admit that, at first it was kind of nice that she passed away on Easter, like the remembrance of the resurrection was really kind of cool. But I think now that I've left the church, it is what it is. It's just another day. But
exactly. But that brings a lot of peace, really.
Yeah.
When I can look at Christmas as the 25th of December and a really fun, I love the music and, all of that. And so it's not as, I don't know why it just.
And not getting to the decorating Olympics. And
Oh, you guys, this is so off topic, but this will crack you up. So we like to go cut a Christmas tree up in the woods. Like we get the $5 thing and we go up in the woods and cut our Christmas tree. So our daughter came home from college and it's like her favorite thing. So we waited till she came home and we went up and cut down our Christmas tree. It was huge. We got a little carried away. It was huge. We brought it home.
How tall are our ceilings? Let's see.
It did fit in our house, but barely. And we put it up and we were like, we'll decorate it later. We never decorated the tree. It just sat there, and we just called it our bare Christmas tree, like the all natural Christmas tree.
Yeah, that's hilarious. And that was another story I told in my head because I think it. He was very sick. He was surgery October, November, and December. So I said to my husband, look, we have all the kids over for Thanksgiving. Nobody's coming for Christmas. We're not going to be having a party or anything like that. Nothing. I am putting up nothing, And after he died, I said, boy, am I glad I don't have Christmas decorations I have to take down.
Yeah.
Oh, so and this year, it was so freeing to just enjoy being together with the kids and, just kind of doing what we wanted and being lazy. And I didn't have to decorate. I didn't have to undecorate. It was.
Yeah.
A couple of times we took our children on a vacation, and I never did a tree. I never did neighbors' gifts. We just got the H out of Dodge. And that's something, like, since I've left the church, I don't feel like I have to do, I can go as big as I want if I'm feeling good that year.
Yeah.
Or I can do as little as I want. And I have not this year, but a couple of years ago, I barely got a Family Dollar tree up.
Yeah. Well, and I have to remember, and my husband is so good about this, because normally he doesn't care about any kind of decorations, but he was like, we had gone to Utah. This was before he passed away. And he said, I bought you a present. And I said, what? And he goes, I know you love nativity scenes. So he got me this really cool little, like, African nativity scene. And I was like, oh, that's so sweet that you think I still like nativity scenes. But I collected nativity scenes all these years. I've collected them. I loved them. I got one in Italy, and and this kind of thing. And I thought, you know what? I'm going to hang on to those nativity scenes, because it's a story. It's a mythology as far as I believe. It's a mythology as far as the divinity, but there is most historians agree that there was a Jesus that lived on the earth.
Yes.
And there was a Mary and there was a Joseph. But the whole virgin birth thing and the whole that's all whatever. But I thought, hey, you know what? I have some favorite movies that I love, and I have favorite books that I love. And these are kind of cool. They're from, some Africa, or this one's from Italy, or this one we got when we were in Jordan. So I'm not going to get rid of that, Yes. So, and I thought he kind of set this little nativity scene up, kind of like, is it okay if I have like a Jesus thing at Christmas time? I'm like, oh, I probably need to think about him a little bit more, maybe, so.
Well, Renee, let me answer your question real quick, because it's been, I was just counting it up, 15-ish years since she passed away. So at first we did a lot of remembrances on Easter, because it was just a good day to remember her. And we would have like a picnic. So we would go find a place that was beautiful at first. So our bishop in Connecticut actually got permission to plant a tree on church property for her. I know. I don't think that ever happened in Utah. Shh.
Yeah. Definitely. Not.
But so there's a pretty tree with pink blossoms that blooms every spring. And so that was where we would go have our picnic, is we would take a blanket and put it under the tree and have a little picnic there. And we'd bring all of the scrapbooks of her and remember her. And sometimes we'd have her friends come and kind of hang out with us. And so we did that for a few years. We did not stay in Connecticut long, because that's military for you. So we tried to kind of keep something like that going. But then depending on where you live, it's actually pretty cold near Easter time. So picnics may not happen. So sometimes we'd have a picnic inside a gym or something somewhere. But we did notice as the years went on that it was, we didn't want Easter to be like sad for the kids and stuff. And so we kind of started switching it to her birthday. So instead of the remembrance being on her death day, it was her birthday. And so
I like that.
We still usually do something little, like she had the weirdest thing. She loved salt and vinegar chips dipped in marshmallow fluff.
Oh, wow. That's bad.
I don't know. It's sweet and sour. I don't know what to tell you. So we will usually have that on her birthday. We'll take a picture of us all with our chips and our, so just something little, just a little remembrance. Cool. But, and the kids, like you said, I don't know how much they remember, but it's a good, she's still part of our lives. And
and you know, what's really great, and is there anything that you do, Liz, as a remembrance, or because it was a suicide and there was some other stuff going on? What is it? Just better that we remember the good times, or how do you handle that?
We planted a weeping willow
Such a great idea.
Here on our property, and kind of had a candlelight vigil with just our family. And everybody helped kind of plant the tree, and then we lit candles and set around the base of the tree. I had a niece that had some books made for my grandson.
Oh.
With all of the interactions. She just pulled pictures off of Facebook. And so my grandson has those, has access to those.
How old is he now?
He just had his 5th birthday out in January.
Oh. So sad.
I just, every once in a while, I'll still hear something from even inside my own family, my siblings, about, if you death by suicide, you're going to hell. That hurts.
Yeah.
My biggest pain has been, as much as he's been missed, I just want to look. I want a window for just 3 seconds.
Yeah. Just so you could see.
Because they have to miss us too.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
They wake every, and it's so odd because my grandson, the week on the anniversary of his father's death, my daughter goes to the gym, and he got kicked out of the gym and told he could never come back. And I know it was his little cells in his body.
Yep.
Just because he's not naughty all the time.
Right. Yeah, it's interesting what we don't realize, because I was telling my kids and I were all talking, and I said, all my kids are close together. Most of them are 2 years apart. I have a couple of them that are 18 months apart. So as the mother, I looked at them collectively, right? But they were these 3 and these 3, because these kids were, 9, 7, and 5. And these guys were all together in middle school and high school. So, my oldest was 9 when he was born. So when he left at 18, this kid is still in elementary school and he's still a baby. And that's how he remembers him. So he doesn't have the memories that my son, who was the next one up from him, have. Completely different memories. And I was like, well, of course, why didn't I think of that? You weren't there. My younger brother is 8 years younger. So he was 8 when I left. So for eternity, this child will be 10 years old. For the rest of my life, he will be 10 years old. I have no memories of him in junior high or high school. And so that's what you forget, is that, oh, you weren't there. Oh, you didn't know that. Oh, you have to be told the stories, but you will create a love through the stories that we're going to give you and share with you, and the pictures and things like that. There's our youngest grandchild is 4. So she won't remember except for through other stories and things like that. But the one of the beautiful things was, I have a grandson that's autistic, and my other grandson said to his mom, my daughter, wow, listening to you guys tell your stories, I realized that's our stories with their son. That's how, he's nonverbal. He, he's completely, in his own little world. And he just realized, oh, that's our story too. And it really touched his heart. This little 13-year-old boy really touched his heart, that, oh, that's our story. And it was beautiful. So anyway, I appreciate you guys sharing your stories tonight. And I do think, Trish, is there anything else that we can do to, like you said, to get rid of the silly platitudes, to say that we don't say things like Liz, like we don't put a judgment on how someone died, or we don't put a judgment, or we don't try to tell our story when someone else is grieving, or we don't try to say typical Christian things. We don't even know where these people are religiously. Why does America assume everybody's Christian? That's a whole nother podcast.
And even if they are Christian, you don't know what they believe in their heart. I mean, you don't
I
know.
There's so many derivatives, even to Christianity, even inside Mormonism.
Yep. Right.
It's nutters.
Yeah. So to say, oh, I know that he's with his grandma and grandpa now, or oh, I know that he's much happier. It's like, you don't know anything. But so
that annoys me. I don't want to be told those things. And it's not as comforting as people think.
No.
It's not. Yeah. So here, my opinion, and you guys tell me what you think about this, but my opinion is, first of all, I would rather, it's uncomfortable if you don't say anything. Like, you can't just keep walking around pretending nothing happened. Like, you can't, you know what I mean? Like, don't just like walk past or say hi or whatever. If you haven't said something, I feel like you should say something. But if you don't know what to say, all you need to say is, I'm sorry. I'm sorry you're going through this. And that's it. Like, that's all you need to say.
Yeah.
And if you know them better and you want to like, engage, then that's fine. But that's all you need to say. And
exactly.
That my other thing that I would say is, also don't feel bad to ask what they need. So if you want to help and you don't know what they need, there's absolutely nothing wrong with saying to them, what can I do? What do you need? And maybe have some ideas, like, if I bring you some granola bars, would that help? Because you guys know what it's like when you're grieving. You don't eat. You just don't eat.
And you don't, when all this food goes in the garbage because you're not hungry. My daughter lost so much weight, even though she was pregnant. She just, she couldn't eat. And like I was telling a friend, friends. I was texting you guys and I said, people just need to understand, we don't want a tuna casserole. We want chocolate chip cookies.
Yes.
Nobody wants a casserole. I want cookies.
Or send a pizza. I got so tired. I started sending people pizza.
Everybody
like Domino's or
Liz, I started doing that too, because what happens is that you end up with all this food because people are trying to be kind, and listen, it is kind. It is. But I was like, so what I started doing is I bring them frozen pizzas and like a bag of salad. And I'm like, this is for when you actually need it.
That's
Trish,
so
I love
smart.
you. You want to know something crazy about me? I would go to Walmart, get a frozen lasagna, a bag of salad, a 6-pack of soda, or 12 and a box of ice creams, and I would hang it on their door in the Walmart or Smith's bag and knock and run away.
Nice.
By the way, Trish or Liz, by the way, you are now in the witness protection program. I don't know if you know this or not, but you are silhouetted by your back window and completely dark.
I know. I'm like, my phone, I have to have
hidden
plugged in.
Your identity. You can claim a new identity.
I'm always
if you'd
causing
like to.
problems. Did you hear the cow? Did you hear the
No.
cow? Okay, good.
I
got so nervous.
Well, I'm sad
we used to live across the street from, me too, because we used to live across the street from a pasture and there were cows all over. And I decided somehow that those were mine. And I'm like, oh, my cows are out. How great. I love cows. They're
I
amazing.
do too.
See, there you are again. The woman, people, the woman makes bread, cheese, butter, wine, honey. What was that other thing you were making the other day?
Vanilla. I make my own extracts.
Yes, vanilla extract.
Hold on. So that means Renee and I need to come to Liz's house for a girls' weekend. She get
absolutely. Yeah.
So if you are in need and you need someone to bring you something, just call Liz, because Trish and I are going to give you a lasagna, from Walmart.
Frozen pizza. Yep.
Yeah. Liz is going to give you homemade vanilla extract, perhaps homemade bread, and some cheese. So you will not.
Except Liz is getting better about having that stuff for her own family.
That's right.
Exactly.
That's right. Yeah. That's what we do. And that was one of the greatest things I heard one time. Someone said, how it was like every member of missionary and our role as mothers was to, all this missionary pressure. And I remember hearing this talk one time and they said, if you are a mother, raising your children right now is missionary work. I was like, thank you. Thank you. It just, it took so much pressure off me. The pressure is crazy. Well, thank you, ladies, for sharing your stories and being so vulnerable tonight. And I appreciate your input and your comments and your reaching out when, for me was so wonderful. I here again, here's two great friends that I've never met in real life. This is what I love about social media. Don't ever talk bad to me about social media because it is amazing.
I love it.
Yeah. All right. Well, Liz, go turn on the lights, and Trish, you turn off the lights and go home.
That's my plan.
Okay. All right.
Good night,
See you
ladies.
later.
Bye-bye.
Good night. Bye-bye. Okay. All right. Well, I hope you guys enjoyed our conversation. And I'd love for you to message me if you have any stories of your own or any advice. I would love to share any comments that you might have about what helped you the most when you were going through grief. Comments that people made that were very, very soothing and helpful. I would love to know that. And I would love to share that on a recap at some point. And I would if you are interested, if you have a story to tell, please reach out to me, shebecamevisible.org. Please tell me your story. And I want you also to remember that I am under the Mormon Discussions umbrella, and they are a nonprofit, and they completely, the time and the effort that especially the historically directed podcasts have, the research and the history and the things that they do, it takes up so much time. If you feel compelled to donate, it would be so lovely. And I just heard the saddest news ever, and that was that Amazon was stopping their Amazon Smile program, because I had signed up Mormon Discussions as my Smile, and so every time I bought something on Amazon, they would receive a donation. I'm very sad that that's going away, but I will be making up for it, because I would not miss one of the podcasts that are under the Mormon Discussions umbrella in a heartbeat. You can, if you want to know where I'm at on Wednesday nights, I am somewhere watching, if it's on my phone or if it's in my room, somewhere I'm watching Mormonism Live. And I have a great, I love Ramiumpton Ruminations. I love that one. I love all of the podcasts I love history. I love learning. I love learning new facts, and these things take time and they take effort. So if you feel compelled to donate a little bit to Mormon Discussions, please do so. You can do it on the website, and I'm sure that they would really appreciate it. So have a good week. I hope 2023 is treating all of you kindly, and that you're looking forward to what it's going to unfold for you. We certainly are as a family. It's definitely a new chapter in our lives, and we look forward to seeing how this new year is going to unfold for us as well. So thank you so much, and we will talk to you all again. Bye-bye.